Here's what's interesting to me. When Rob gets to WCW, Bill Watts says, I don't want you to use the name Van Dam. And Rob thinks that's sort of weird and says, why not? And he says, I don't want you to be confused with someone else. I thought that's hilarious because that's what everything in wrestling is about, is trying to, I mean, how many fucking Nature Boys were there? Like, that's what you do. I don't know.
Yeah, but at the same time, you want to be the one that everybody else is copying.
Right.
You don't want to copy everybody. You want to be the innovator, and you want to be the one that creates something that everybody else wants to imitate, not imitating someone. So I agree with that philosophy.
Well, not too terribly long after Rob is in WCW, Ole Anderson takes over because Watts is out. And Ole just didn't see the same thing that Bill did. So Rob winds up not signing a contract and just being able to leave. He was working on a sort of nightly deal. And he decides, hey, it's time to hit the independents. And he sort of sharpens his skills a little bit. He only had a run in WCW from like December of 92 to May of 93. And apparently Mike Graham was the guy who would always push him to sign. But Rob would say things like, I forgot it at home, I'll bring it. And I feel like Rob was probably playing a game there just because he knew, especially at that time, man, business is down. If you're going to get in, you need to get in with the WWF. Don't get locked down here, right?
I think also just the changeover in bookers from Watts to Ole, it's a completely different philosophy. And both of those guys are old-time guys, but Ole for sure wasn't a big fan of the pretty boy, good-looking guy. And Rob had a different look. You know, he didn't look like that wrestler type that Ole really would have liked to have.
How would you compare a booker like Bill Watts with a booker like Ole Anderson?
Well, both guys are pretty similar in that they're both old school guys and they are in favor of the wrestling. They're not really big on gimmicks. They're not really big on high flying, and they both favor heat over making the audience happy. You know, a lot of the old school guys, it was all about getting heat and leaving heat and building up to the one big match for the babyface to get the blow off. But everything building up to it and all your TV was all about heat. And Watts and Ole were alike in that way. But I do, as much as it pains me to say this, Bill was probably a lot more open to new ideas, and Bill did see the value of youth. And he saw the value of young talent to draw a younger crowd. Ole didn't. Ole felt that, no, you want the older crowd and the steadfast crowd.
He's working some independents and runs into Brady Boone, who suggests that Rob's style would work great in Japan. So Brady makes a call, and eventually Rob gets a shot to do a tour with All Japan. And he winds up working there from 93 to 97. And of course, he's working some shots here in the States, especially for ECW. But Rob would probably say that he really put everything together with the Rob Van Dam character and sort of honed his style as Rob Van Dam that we know while he was in Japan. What do you think of a guy sort of, I mean, this feels like almost like the old Warriors code from centuries ago, where really if you're going to sort of become a badass, you have to go to another land, a faraway land, and then come back. What do you think of guys who go to Japan and really sort of put it all together, whether it's Rob Van Dam or AJ Styles? I mean, AJ Styles is the most recent example where he's working with TNA, really not serious interest from WWE from a financial standpoint. He goes over, conquers Japan, and comes back for big money. Now he's the tippy top guy. Japan allows them that opportunity, does it not?
It does, and it allows guys maybe with not the biggest personalities and that aren't that flamboyant here in the States and aren't able to get over to go get over with their in-ring skills in Japan, because they don't speak the language. They don't have to. However, if they can tell a story and they can perform in between bell time, then they're going to do very well in Japan. So it's a different style. It's a completely different philosophy for a guy like Rob Van Dam, who didn't have the biggest personality per se, especially at this time when he's young in the business and he's still developing. It's a great time to go and learn. And as JR, you say, go away, learn a new hold. this was an opportunity for Rob to go learn a different style and to grow and just get experience in the business.
And I feel like it's worth mentioning here that Kenny Omega is the most recent example of this, at least to me. You know, here's a guy who WWE didn't see a ton in developmental. He goes to Japan and proves not just them, but the whole fucking world wrong. And arguably one of the best wrestlers in the world, if not the very best wrestler in the world. But it all happened through the in-ring work, exactly like you're saying.
And but you know what? Yeah, here's funny. I'm going to go off on a Kenny Omega tirade here for a second. I saw some early Kenny Omega stuff that he produced himself, that was complete ha-ha and just complete bullshit. And I found it some of the most entertaining stuff I have ever seen in my life. And that, when I saw the old stuff of Kenny Omega just goofing around, and it was a thing on a boat and in and out of a house, I went, wow, this guy's got personality. And I watch the Bullet Club stuff with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Cody. Highly entertaining. So for people, when I hear that, well, Kenny Omega didn't have a whole lot of personality, that son of a bitch has a shitload of personality. And I think that he would do really well here in the States. But it was his ring work and it was him getting over somewhere else that got everybody's attention over here.
Well, eventually, Rob is in Japan and he starts to realize that you gotta fucking kick these dudes for real. And he learned very quickly that the sort of softer American style was not resonating with the crowd or the boys. And so they had to really start kicking the shit out of each other. And that goes back to the Sheik, who taught him to be stiff, but it's another level in Japan sometimes. Going back to like Kawada and guys like that who would just kick the fuck out of each other. It sort of smarten us up. Why is that? I mean, I always sort of thought the gimmick with wrestling is it's supposed to look like it hurts, but then it doesn't. But then over there, and you see that influence everywhere. I mean, even 15 years ago, Low-Ki was kicking the shit out of dudes.
Yeah, I don't get it. I was brought up in a different way. I was brought up, to work and not to hurt your opponent and to work lightly and take care of your opponent. However, times change, and I think that in the United States, we're kind of the last ones to adopt it. But when you have competition with UFC, where guys are going out there beating the shit out of each other, that's what your competition is, and you have to make it look the best you can. When you would go to Japan or you would go to Otto Vahn's in Germany, a lot of times the foreign talent coming in to their country, they would be tested. Let's see how tough they are. Let's see if they can take it. And they would put them in the ring and beat the shit out of them to see if they're going to come back, see if they're going to actually fight back. And that would tell them in Japan what kind of character they have. Well, this guy's got it. He's tough. He's not going to take any shit from anybody. And that helps get you over with the office and with the boys and then with the crowd.